The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Well, you're looking at traits. And remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so up?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate.
Former Bears scouting director Greg Gabriel talks football live every week on the Barroom Network. Also available on demand.
In 1966, the Chicago Bears drafted the son of a Pennsylvania coal miner in the 4th round. Doug Buffone would go on to play 15 seasons for the Bears and later be named one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. His allegiance to the Bears never waned, even when he took to the microphone and witnessed some horrendous Bears teams.
The fact is, there's not the fear put into him, because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job, or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's.
Doug told it like it is, and that's part of the reason his nephew John has dedicated this show to Doug. And now John Buffone is spreading Buffone-branded beratements just like his uncle.
Being a Chicago Bears fan is like being in a toxic relationship that you can't get out of. I think I'm finally done, and then they come back and they say, well, things are going to be different this time. I've changed. We've got receivers now. We've got the quarterback now. And even though I've heard this song and dance before, I go back every time.
And he's got pep talks too.
I love this team. And I know everyone watching and listening loves this team. So while we may be pessimistic and cynical, every one of us still has hope that the stars will align at some point. And if that ever does happen, you'll be glad you stuck around.
John is telling it like it is here on Buffone 55. And joining John are Alyssa Barbieri, managing editor of USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and also Danny Shimon, lead game and draft analyst for the Barroom Network. Buckle up and bear down. This is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55. My name's John Buffone, and yet again, we begin a show after a loss by the Chicago Bears. You know what? This is our 8th year on the Barroom Network, and during that time, the Bears are a miserable 50-70. We've covered 70 losses and only 50 wins through the duration of this show. And I know my Uncle Doug, I know what he would say if he had to cover this type of futility, because he's done it before.
This is moronic.
Damn straight. Fortunately, I have two great people to help commiserate with me tonight to help make some sense of what's going on. First, my producer and co-host, Alyssa Barbieri, and our game analyst, Danny Shimon. Guys, welcome back to Buffone 55. Alyssa, you've had to endure 45 of those 70 losses since you joined the show back in 2020. Is it getting any easier for you to deal with these defeats?
Not in the slightest. In fact, I feel like I'm stuck in some vicious time loop that shows no signs of changing anytime soon. Just for once, I would like a different season where we haven't done the same thing over and over and over again. And this game, I mean, we talked about it last week. It kind of felt like a must win, especially when you consider how it ultimately panned out. The Bears lost to a team that they should have handled if they had any semblance of an offense and didn't commit some costly turnovers. And the defense, even though they couldn't stop Jonathan Taylor, I think they did enough to win that game as they have all season. But once again, this offense looks lost. But hey, at least we got Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze. I mean, they look like the real deal. So I guess that's different for once.
Danny, how you feel after that loss?
That was one of the more frustrating games to watch because I am 100% that the Bears are a better team than the Colts were on Sunday. But they just couldn't get over the hump. And in terms of putting points on the board, the turnovers, the points off turnovers that they gave up, it was just so frustrating because you saw that the Bears were a better team. They just had a feeling that they weren't going to be able to do it. And Alyssa, if my math is correct, you've covered 22 victories, right, through your career here at the Barroom. That's 11 more than Matt Eberflus has had in 11 seasons. Or I'm sorry, 3 seasons. So he's only had 11. So at least you're beating him there.
So at least my job's safe, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're cemented in. But like that's we've made it through a lot of losses, guys, and we're going to get on the other side of this. There's got to be light at the end of the tunnel somewhere where we're going to hopefully bring that record back up to around 500 or at least close to 500, or God forbid, just win some games.
Not that hope show was before week 1.
We got one hope show per year. That's basically all we can budget for. After covering this team as long as we have, we're budgeted for one hope show a year, and we've already burned through it. So we'll see how things work throughout the rest of the season. Danny, we're going to bring you back after the B55 segment. I understand you have some tape for us to look at. I'm really looking forward to that. But Alyssa, can you please let our audience know how this show works?
Of course. So our first segment is the signature part of the show. That's when I ask John 5 questions that he answers within 55 seconds. John's beloved Uncle Doug played 15 years with the Bears, wore number 55, and is the inspiration for this first segment that we call B55. Doug went on to become a very successful businessman and broadcaster, and John channels Doug's energy and passion in this segment. Then after
you are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
God, I love that.
We're gonna have to play that every friggin' episode, just saying. But then after a break, to let you know what is happening here at the Barroom with our other Bears coverage, Danny is going to join us for a segment that we call Buffone's Basement. It's an informal discussion about our beloved but beleaguered Bears. And in the middle of that segment, we're going to show you the Podfather's latest video essay, and then we'll finish things up with addressing any questions that our live chat audience might have for us. So, John, as much as I am tired of rooting for a team that loses so frequently, I will never tire of this first segment, our B55.
Listen, as you know, I live in Pennsylvania, so no one here wants to hear me complain about the Bears, so I'm glad that you at least enjoy it.
This is group therapy. That's the one thing that I look forward to after a loss, is just knowing that we get to come on here and just talk it out, and it helps us feel better until inevitably another loss. But I digress. Okay, John, so we're going to kick things off with the obvious. So everyone on this show picked the Bears to beat the Colts, and obviously that didn't happen. As you were watching that game unfold, what was going through your mind, and ultimately, how did you react to the loss? Try to keep it under 55 seconds. Go.
So you would think that being a lifelong Bears fan, I would be able to handle a loss a lot better than I do, but I probably, like a lot of fans, take it personally when the Bears lose. I was literally in a bad mood all through the rest of Sunday and mostly into Monday. The Bears lost. My fantasy team lost. I had all my friends in Pittsburgh chirping in my ear about how awesome the Steelers are. I barely even glanced at the late afternoon games. I didn't watch a snap of the Chiefs and Falcons game on Sunday night. I didn't listen to any sports radio or watch any sports programming on TV throughout Monday. I did have the 2 Monday night games on, but really didn't pay attention to them. So is it immature? Yes. Is it unhealthy to put my happiness into the hands of the Chicago Bears? Absolutely. But does this loss ultimately impact the bottom line of my life? Not really. But this is one of those things that you can't really explain to a non-sports fan, because on the surface, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you are a diehard fan, you get it.
Yeah, that's the great and terrible thing about sports, is that when you win, it's just the greatest feeling. And when you lose, it just hurts so bad. And you can't explain it, like you said, to someone who doesn't follow sports. And that's exactly how I felt after this loss too. It was made more frustrating because they should have won this game. Right. There were multiple times that the Colts were trying to hand this game to the Bears, and the Bears were handing it back. They were playing hot potato. No one wanted to win this game. It was just really frustrating. Like Danny said, the Bears were the better team, and they didn't win. I remember there were even some Colts, beat writers who were surprised that Indianapolis pulled out the win. It was just, it was brutal. It's losses like those where, I mean, there were some bright spots, in terms of like the long term in the future, which I guess that's what we have to look forward to this season. But in the moment, it was just one of those losses that just really, really stings.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you think your team might be a borderline playoff team or a team that can make the playoffs, every one of those wins is going to count, and every one of those losses is going to count. So trust me, I understand it was only week 3 and it's still very early in the season. There's a lot of time to rebound there. But unless you're like an odds-on favorite to think you're going to win, 11, 12, 13 games, every one of those wins is going to mean something, especially if you're in the hunt come, December or whatever. So everyone, you really wish that you can get one of those games that we saw on Sunday in the win column, because ultimately that could be the difference between making the playoffs or missing the playoffs. And God willing, they turn it around that they're actually in the hunt come December, and we're not talking about a 4 or 5 win season or whatever, but which I don't think is going to happen. But at the same time, you really want to see that game get in the win column.
Especially because when you think about it, the issue last season with this Matt Eberflus-led team, they were blowing those close games. How many one-score losses did they have? And already in this season, when you're supposed to be turning a corner and you can't finish out games, it's more of the same with Matt Eberflus. I know we're going to talk plenty about him coming up, but it just makes it sting even more.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So, John, speaking of the offense there, the Bears, while showing some statistical improvement, still struggled to put points on the board. Caleb Williams had 2 interceptions. The running game didn't have the day we were hoping for against the worst rush defense in the league. And the play calling caught a lot of heat during and after the game. So, John, what was your take on this offensive performance? 55 seconds are on the clock. Hit it.
Look, I know there are going to be a lot of ups and downs with a rookie quarterback, but it certainly isn't all on him. They can't run the ball. Caleb Williams threw the ball 52 times. That isn't taking pressure off of your rookie quarterback. That's putting all of the pressure on your rookie quarterback, because your line can't block and you don't have an offensive play caller that apparently can scheme up anything to get the run game going. And then there's this. The Bears had a 1st and goal situation inside the 5-yard line. They did a direct snap to Khalil Herbert for a couple of yards. And then on 2nd and goal, they're in shotgun again and hand it off to Herbert for a minimal gain down to the 1-yard line. And then you go to 3rd and goal. Once again, they're in the shotgun, and there was a clumsy handoff to Khalil Herbert, again for no gain. Then here we go, 4th and goal from the 1-yard line. They're in shotgun. What's the play call? How about a speed option for a 12-yard loss that created an incredible still frame of the Chicago Bears offensive line looking like they got flattened by a truck with 5 Colts defenders running down DeAndre Swift? I'm not sure that play would have worked against Indiana State, let alone the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I don't think I needed to relive that 4th and goal call. My goodness. Just like you said, the sight of those 4 offensive linemen just on their ass. Looking at that after the game and seeing it on my timeline, it was just, you gotta be kidding me. It was frustrating. Like you said, with Caleb Williams, it's not all on him. Obviously, there are some things that, mistakes he'd like to have back, including that first interception. But I mean, when you look at it, they have no run game. It's been non-existent. DeAndre Swift has just been not worth the money at all. No. And this was against the worst rush defense in the NFL. It's just really frustrating when you look at that. You look at through 3 games, and Waldron has failed to get this offense ready to make any sorts of improvement. At least Caleb is improving despite what's happening around him. But it does kind of feel like we could be looking for a change at the end of the season. I know it's way too soon because we're 3 games in, but sure. It's frustrating because it doesn't look like, they're getting the job done. But I mean, like you said, the offense, it's the same old. And we'd like to see a little improvement. We'll see. But I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba tried to warn us that Shane Waldron was not it. And yeah, wish we'd listened.
Well, you brought up a good point, because I kind of forgot about the fact that this was supposed to be the get right game for the running game, because it was the worst running defense in the NFL. And this was supposed to be, hey, if you're going to figure it out, this is the team to get it, to get it going with. And it just didn't happen. And that's what's really frustrating. They still could not get anything going behind the offensive line, and they couldn't get any of the running backs going. And that's what's a little concerning, because if you can't get it going against that team, what team is it going to click for? And I'm not sure.
We can't even say the Panthers anymore. Andy Dalton has come in and
boy, yeah.
I mean, it's been 1 week, but I mean, my goodness, Bryce Young I'm secretly hoping that somehow Bryce is playing in that game in week 5 when the Bears are playing them, just to give us a little hope.
Let's see. I don't know.
Okay, so John, I know that the show has been a bit of a bummer so far, but
yeah.
Let's try to get in the positive spin zone. We heard about all of the problems the offense was having, but were there any positives to look at? I'm just trying to bring some sunshine to this stormy cloud segment. You've got 55 seconds.
Okay, so Caleb did look a little more comfortable in the pocket, I guess. He did throw for 363 yards and 2 touchdowns, although he had the 2 interceptions. But that's more passing yards than we've seen in a while. And also, I said last week I wanted to see Cole Kmet and Roschon Johnson get more involved, and that certainly didn't happen. Cole Kmet had 10 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. It was really nice to see him become a reliable target for Caleb Williams. And as for Roschon Johnson, I don't know if it was because Travis Homer got put on IR, but it was nice to see him out there running hard. He was the Bears' leading rusher, albeit for 30 yards. Take that for what it's worth. But what is interesting is that DeAndre Swift has seen his snap count percentage kind of plummet throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 1, it was at 70%. Week 2 was at 66%. And last Sunday, it was at 53%. Now, those stats are courtesy of our friend Lauren Cox over at the Locked On Bears podcast. But as you were talking about, Alyssa, DeAndre Swift not flashing so far, and his snap percentage is going down to show that. I'm not sure what that is, but it got to be something.
I mean, his production or lack thereof, I think, and that makes a lot of sense. You know, we finally got we got on the show last week and we were begging to see more of Roschon Johnson, and we got it this week. And he was the most effective running back for the Bears out there, and still wanted to see more of him. And I think that kind of looking at the tea leaves, I would expect DeAndre Swift's carries to go down again heading into week 4. But I mean, looking at the positives, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's more of like the long-term future angle of it all. I mean, for Caleb Williams, I mean, he threw 363 passing yards. When's the last time that happened? I think it was Brian Hoyer in 2016, which is like almost 10 years ago. And then you have Rome Odunze, him and Caleb just like having that quick, easy connection. And it's really exciting to see that they look like the real deal. And it feels like Caleb is the guy. But again, in the here and now, right now, it's really hard to kind of really focus on the positives when most of the time, you know, a lot of stuff isn't going right.
Well, and also, I think I heard this on the score, is that Rome Odunze is only the 4th Bears rookie wide receiver to go over 100 yards receiving since like 1983. So it's been 40 years and only 4 Bears rookies have caught 100 yards in a game. I think Anthony Miller was one. Oh gosh, the other ones are going to escape me, and I'll have to look that up.
I've had it. I have had it.
Great. And so the fact that it's been 40 years and only 4 Bears rookies have caught 100 receiving yards in a game just kind of epitomizes what the franchise has been through the last almost half century. But so I guess that's a positive to see that the rookie is flashing a little bit.
Yeah, and we're 3 games in. You know, I'm excited to see, you know, how much he continues to grow throughout this season. And obviously our one concern is hopefully this offensive line doesn't get him killed back there, because I mean, he's been sacked way too much in these first 3 games. But, you know, we talked, John, about the players and the play calling. So let's turn our attention to the head coach. Another close game, another loss for Matt Eberflus. There have been a lot of mixed feelings on Eberflus throughout his tenure. Despite a lack of wins, he has transformed the defense into one of the best in the league. But with a 1-2 record so far this season, is it too soon to say that Eberflus might be on the hot seat? The clock starts now.
Probably on the hot seat at the beginning of the season. And like you said, his saving grace has been that what he's done with the defense, but he was only in that position because they had to let go of the defensive coordinator last year. We're still unsure of his ability to put a staff together. We've seen some really bad challenges so far this year. And then last week against the Colts, after they scored a touchdown, they had to burn a timeout because they ran the extra point team out there, and then they decided that they needed to go for 2. And I just feel like as the head coach, and especially if you are not the offensive play caller, it should be relayed that, hey, if we score, we're going for 2, get ready, and not like, oh crap, what are we doing? That could have been a killer if they desperately needed that timeout at the end of the game. I'm just afraid that we're seeing John Fox with Mitch Trubisky and we're seeing Matt Nagy with Justin Fields. What happened there? You have a lame duck head coach with a rookie quarterback, and you make him learn a whole new system in year 2 and potentially stunt his growth. And that's why I do want it to work with Eberflus. I really do, but you got to show progress. You just can't be like, oh, we're staying stable for the sake of being stable.
No, that's the thing too. We're in year 3. It's not like this is his first season where he's learning the ropes. He's still having those same struggles with game management and burning timeouts. Like you said, the one on the 2-point conversion, that's inexcusable. I mean, everyone should know their job in that moment. That's right. Just something that should not be happening in year 3. And I feel like we had hoped, I mean, maybe we got blinded by the makeover in the off season and a lot of the hype, but it's still the same. It's like the Scooby-Doo gate. You pull the mask off. It's the same old Matt Eberflus underneath there. He's doing the same stuff and he's not changing. And I know it's like it's week 3 or week 4 now. But I think he's on the hot seat because this is the year 3, when Kevin Warren, after they decided to retain Matt Eberflus, that press conference when Kevin Warren got up there and he was talking about how year 3 was the year. That's when everything should start to finally click and there needs to be progress. So if there isn't, I think it's fair to wonder or to assume that the Bears could be looking to move on from him.
I know, it's just so cyclical, though. This is the same thing that we've seen over and over again. With just like, you know what, we're going to give the head coach another shot at it, and we're going to give him with the rookie quarterback. Oh, it's not working out because the rookie's struggling and the play calling is suspect, so we're going to clear house. And so that's not. I mean, I get it. And a change of coach sometimes can be a good thing. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this later. But it's just like, man, we've seen this before, and we've seen it in the last 2 regimes. We've seen it. So like that is concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, I like to rewatch, John, some comfort shows, but I'm tired. I don't want to watch this. I'm watching the same show every season, and I'm tired. I want something new to focus on. So, I mean.
Yeah, do you ever watch reruns of a show you hate?
Oh, gosh, never. But yeah, we have the power to turn the TV there. We can't do that. We love this thing too much.
You're right.
Okay, so, John, we're going to finish on this. The Bears are hosting the injury-decimated Rams this week at Soldier Field. This isn't a game that we predicted the Bears would win at the beginning of the season, but with the laundry list of injuries plaguing LA, Sunday might provide a real chance to get back to 500. John, I know it's only week 4, but is this a must-win game for the Bears? Take us home, 55 seconds.
Well, for my overall well-being, every game is a must-win. But calling this game a must-win is a bit hyperbolic for me at this point. You certainly don't want to be 1-3, but they do have the Panthers after the Rams, which should be a winnable game, even though Andy Dalton looks like he has a much better grasp on the offense than Bryce Young did. Then they have the Jaguars, who are currently winless. They play them over in England. So while winning this game would certainly go a long way as the Bears enter the second quarter of the season, so to speak, I don't think a loss would necessarily sink their ship. That being said, I'm going to be just as ticked off if they happen to lose this Sunday against the Rams, who are without some of their biggest playmakers. As Bears fans, we need something to spark our intensity again. We need to see this team overperform at some point and get our excitement level back up. So maybe the Bears players need that shot of adrenaline as well. So is this a must win? No, but in a way, maybe it is. All right, we got a lot more Bears talk coming up. But first, let's take a look at what else is going on over here at the Barroom Network.
And I hear people preaching patience. Patience for what? Don't preach patience to a guy that's 72 years old that's been a Bear fan since 1961 and has 2 championships to show for it in 60-some years. Take that and shove it somewhere else, and you with it. That's just coach speak. That's media speak. That's nonsense. Because you know what division we're in? Probably one of the best divisions in football. It wasn't supposed to be that way, was it, folks? Minnesota looks great. Green Bay, I got a feeling they could take me off the street or Aldo LaFleur and say, look, we know that you played Park District ball back in the 90s, but we think you can help us here. And he'd figure out a way to win the game. Detroit, with Goff, we're not winning for another decade, kids. I got some bad news for everybody. These teams are young. These teams have great coaches. Where do you think we're going with this patience talk? Where are we going? Tell me what happens at the end of the patience.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Danny Shimon's back with us. Danny, I'm going to jump right into it. The issue of patience has resurfaced throughout the Bears' social media atmosphere and the mainstream media as well. The argument made by some is that fans must, exhibit patience with rookie quarterback Caleb Williams. And with an offense that has 6 new starters and a new offensive coordinator, where do you stand on the area of patience for this Bears offense? Is it too early to complain about the lack of production?
Well, Uncle Mike North's not going to like my answer here, but I say you need to have patience with the quarterback. Remember, he's a rookie. He's going through his ups and downs. And I stressed this right after the draft, guys. And I said, this is a rookie quarterback. I don't care if you're the first pick or the 256th pick in the draft. You're going to go through your rookie struggles. And that's what's going on here with Caleb. The talent is there. We see it, even through bad games. We see his arm talent. We see his ability to throw the football. Where you should be able to criticize this offense is in the coordination of this offense in terms of Shane Waldron. He's not the typical Bears offensive coordinator, the first time, position coach brought in to run his offense. He's been doing this for 3 years. He came from the Sean McVay tree. Everyone else that's come from the Sean McVay tree has been successful so far in the NFL. Even Zach Robinson, who's doing it for the first time in Atlanta, had seen some success there as well. We talk about Mac McDaniel came from the Shanahan tree, and obviously Shanahan and McVay kind of similar in terms of their concept. So, guys are coming in and playing, calling plays and being successful. With Waldron, what's really disappointing me is that he's come in and there seems to be no rhyme nor reason to what he's doing, right? We're talking about running from the shotgun consistently. We're talking about an offensive line that cannot generate push off the snap. So why are you going to set your running back up and your quarterback up in the shotgun? Give him some sort of a head start. Allow coordinate some decoy in your offensive play calling, get under center, some play action, stuff like that. Help your rookie progress slowly. We've seen this kid get killed his last 2 games, right? Only 2 sacks this past game, but he was pressured consistently. There were some tough shots on him as well. This guy, if he keeps going this pace, he's not going to last 7 games, guys. So help your rookie quarterback. Roll him out a couple of times, not just once, maybe twice. Keep going. Now, in the second half, I did see I wasn't on what the official count was. I saw Caleb under center a little bit more. We saw a little bit more success, right? Some play action. Now, again, he's got to get better, Caleb, that is, in selling the play action, but that's something he can work on, in the offseason and all that stuff. But, just the threat of handing the ball off to a running back allows that second level defender to kind of freeze in his spot there. We'll get into this later on with some film, and give Caleb an opportunity to kind of throw that ball over that second and third level, in front over that second level defender in front of the third level defender. The coordination, they're not helping this young kid as he's going through his growing pains is what I'm trying to say. So the patience with the quarterback has got to be there, but the patience with the coaching staff and the head coach, don't even get started on the head coach right now. But I mean, that's where the patience, can't run. You can't give him that much patience. It's been week 3. You've had an off season. You've had training camp. I expect the coaching staff to be, up on par, ready to go. The rookie's coming along slowly but surely.
Listen, we talked about and we complained a lot about the production throughout the B55 segment. So is patience going to be a virtue in this, or have we shown enough throughout the years? Or do you have to kind of reset the patience whenever there's new personnel?
Well, I agree with Danny where when we're talking about patience, it should be with Caleb Williams. He's played 3 games, but like one of our commenters, there's a comment on the screen before, said he's improved drastically just from week 1 to week 3. And like Danny said before, they need to start helping him out a lot more. So I'll have patience. I think we will with Caleb, but it's difficult when you see like Jaden Daniels, going off of Monday Night Football, but he's in a situation where he does have that help, where he has an offensive coordinator that's setting him up for success. But I mean, it's not too early to complain about this offense's lack of production when it does fall on Shane Waldron, who is an experienced offensive coordinator. Like Danny said, he's someone who's come in here and he called, I think for 2 years, he was the OC for Seattle. So he has experience calling plays. So this shouldn't be something where he's going through, the pains of it and struggling. Like he should know what he's doing at this point, and you should build this offense around Caleb. And it just doesn't seem like they're doing enough to help him. So I think throughout the rest of the season, I think we're going to continue to see Caleb improve, and I'll have patience as far as he is concerned. And as far as Roma Dunze, some of these young players are concerned, but Shane Waldron really needs to quickly turn things around.
Didn't the Bears bring in Cliff Kingsbury for an interview in the offseason? I'm not. Who's to say if anything would have been drastically different? But it's obviously working in Washington right now. So. And
it's only. I know it's the national spotlight game, and I think and obviously Daniels played a great game last night, and Kingsbury now is the talk of the town, but that's not the guy I wanted here. The guy I wanted here was Clint Kubiak, and that's the guy down in New Orleans now. And
doing very well.
Last week they were kind of stifled by that Eagles defense, but the first 2 games they put up 40 points on their opponents, and Dallas is one of those opponents. So that's the guy that comes from the Shanahan tree, was with Mike Shanahan, gives you some of that wide zone, same kind of concepts, but just, the ability to be able to call the play. Obviously his dad, Clint Kubiak, his dad is Gary Kubiak, who was Mike Shanahan's offense coordinator with the Broncos all those years, was the Texans head coach, successfully as well. So, that's the guy that I think they missed the boat on. It wasn't Cliff Kingsbury.
Well, Danny, the Bears' run game is next to last in the NFL, averaging only 72.7 yards per game. What's going on? Last season, Chicago averaged 141 yards rushing per game. Is it the OC? Is it the offensive line, the running backs, the lack of Justin Fields rushing? What is it? And I hope you brought some pictures.
Well, it's all the above, right? We talked about Shane Waldron. I think he's not coordinating this game to the strengths of his players. I think he's putting Caleb Williams in harm's way. I think he's not max protecting. We'll give you a couple of symbols of that later on here. Here we go. First snap here. I talk about max protect. Protect your quarterback, right? We talk about play action under center. Okay, there's Caleb under center. You see the motion, play action. What happens? He's got 12-man personnel here, 2 tight ends, and there goes Roman Dunze. That play action stopped or froze that those second level linebackers. Watch those linebackers as Caleb goes back here with the play action here, and that just freezes them for a second there, and that allows Roman to get over that second level defender, and now Caleb, with his ability to throw the ball, feathers it over that second level in front of that third level defender. That's what I'm talking about. Get him under center. Do some play action. Just a threat of handing the ball off to a running back freezes that second level defender and gives Caleb the ability to beat them down the football field. So the other problem is just, how much autonomy does Caleb have in the pocket? And there's a play here we're going to pull up here in the second clip. They're going to run it. The Colts have 8 defenders, guys. Bears only have 6 blockers in the line of scrimmage. When we go to the all 22 or the wide zone look here, he has DJ Moore and Roman Dunze one-on-one on the outside. Why can't Caleb call right here, call an audible, and just throw a lob up to Dunze or to DJ Moore? What kind of autonomy does Caleb have at the line of scrimmage? Are you kind of setting him out there behind a weak line of weak offensive line and telling him, yeah, you can only do this. You're going to call protections, but you can't change the plays? That's a question I have him for him as well there in terms of Shane Waldron. You got to come on back and say, all right, get under center. And then what kind of autonomy can Caleb do at the line of scrimmage there? This third clip here, this is the clip that's been made famous here, right? This is that 4th down clip. I think Aldo's going to play it. Okay. Offensive line, guys. We have 4 guys that are sitting on their ass here as soon as the ball is snapped. That's not a recipe for success, right? This clip went viral on the internet because it's embarrassing, right? We have the center, we have the left tackle, and the left guard all on the ground here, and there's a toss play. Again, you're in a shotgun formation, with your more like some of an I formation there with the running back behind Caleb, and you toss it out from a 4th and goal. I mean, I think John, you and Alyssa could have come up with better plays here, in terms of what you could have done here to try and score the football. I mean, just idiotic play calling. The offensive line is not one that's based off of power. That's not going to get guys off the line of scrimmage. And again, Alyssa, you mentioned it. This was the worst rushing defense coming into this game. They had allowed almost 500 yards rushing in the first 2 weeks. And guys, they were playing without their best defensive lineman in Buckner, who was on IR, and they still were able to stifle the Bears' running attack. Now, 28 rushes is not enough to establish a run game. And again, you might not be gaining 4 or 5 yards a carry, but if you even get 2-3 yards, at least, again, that threat of being able to run that football, the play action with Caleb under center, I think gives you some ability to make bigger plays down the football field. And if your guys are in front of Caleb are not blocking him or not blocking the defensive lineman, roll him out, get him out of the pocket. You've seen this kid is talented as hell, rolling out and being able to throw and get that ball down the field. These are the things where I'm talking about in terms of helping him, right? DeAndre Swift, I was not a big fan of the signing when it was first made. He's a guy that's more to me is a dual backfield kind of player, gives you a little bit more in the passing game, hell of a receiver out of the passing game, but he's not really a guy that's going to run it in between the tackles. For this offense, I liked, last week we were talking about, I want Khalil Herbert and I want one more Roshan. I want guys that are downhill thumpers that are run between the tackles. And what we saw? We saw Roshan Johnson modest success, but he had better success running between the tackles than a Swift. Swift will not run between the tackles. There are times I was watching the L-22, there's a hole and there's a blocker leading into him through the hole. He still bounces it to the outside. I saw him do that versus the Texans. I saw him do this game here against the Colts as well. So this is not a player that you can be, in my opinion, be your starting bell cow running back. This could potentially be another bad free agent signing. We'll see. That's too early to call that, that. I think that he's a talented player, but he's more of a guy that can give you some options on the outside and as a pass catcher. But you got to go with a Roshan or a Khalil Herbert, more of that, one cut, plant, and hit downfield or upfield, I should say, in between a tackle type of runner for this offense, and get Caleb under center and get Caleb rolling out to his left or to his right. Protect the kid. He's going to develop. He's going to get better. We saw the average he put up there. Obviously 3 turnovers were key. The second interception, actually, we were talking about it before the show. I don't really give him that much fault on that, because that's a play where your NFL quarterback, you've been taught. Your defender, you see the numbers of the backside of your defender. You see his last name. You throw the ball to that receiver, especially if you have a Roman Dunze there, a guy who's big, tall receiver who his guys can go up and make a play on a contested catch. It was bad luck. The other defender came in, hit Dunze, the ball popped up, interception was made. But I think that I don't fault him on that one. But obviously the Colts turned 3 of those turnovers into 14 points, and that's ball game, set, and match.
Well, on the topic of offensive line play, in his latest video essay, Aldo Gandia decided to take a look at how Ryan Poles has built the Bears' offensive line during his time as GM.
Back when Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus were introduced to Chicago as the team's new general manager and head coach, respectively, Poles said this about building an explosive offense.
It starts at the foundation in terms of the O-line and establishing that run game, which then leads to explosive plays.
And that'll do it here in Indy as the Colts pick up their first win of the season.
So as we're 3 games into the 3rd season of the Poles era, let's examine what he's done to build a unit that he referred to as the foundation of an offense. First, these were the offensive linemen from the 2021 season. Today, only 2 remain. Larry Barroom, who is currently on injured reserve and was expected to be the team's backup swing tackle, and the often injured Tevin Jenkins. In Poles' first free agency period, the only significant acquisition for the line was Lucas Patrick. His first season was injury-filled, and he started only 5 games. The following season, he started 15 games, and his performance was insufficient to be re-signed for this season.
In the 2022 NFL Draft.
When the draft came, Poles did not have a first-round pick, but had 2 second-rounders that he devoted to Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. Poles has often stated that he religiously follows his board, best player available.
With the 51st pick.
Unfortunately, Poles had center Cam Jurgens behind Brisker and Gordon on his board.
Center, Nebraska.
Jurgens was chosen to be the heir to Jason Kelsey, and this is what the future Hall of Famer said immediately after the selection was made.
So this is my favorite player in the draft. The Eagles have been using me to evaluate some of the centers coming out, and this guy is a freak athletically. He has the best chance to be a difference maker at the center position. I like this kid a lot, I really do.
Jurgens was the 3rd pick after Brisker. The 9th pick was Luke Gadecki.
This is one of the nastier offensive linemen with pure power.
After a tough rookie season at guard, he was moved to right tackle last season, where he excelled. 6 picks after Poles chose Velus Jones Jr., Bernard Rainman went to the Colts. The thinking on the Austrian-born offensive lineman was that he needed to build bulk before becoming a starter. But Rainman was rushed into duty when Matt Pryor, yes, that Matt Pryor, was benched for poor play. He started 11 games as a rookie, and it wasn't all pretty. But in his 2nd year, Pro Football Focus named him one of 2023's Breakout Players of the Year. Another analytics group, Sports Info Solutions, wrote that he dropped his sack rate from 2.2% to 1.2%. Back to the draft, the Bears had no pick in the 4th round and therefore missed an opportunity to draft Zach Tom, who is playing very well for the Packers. Poles did acquire more draft capital by trading down 4 times, where he invested heavily on the offensive line by choosing Braxton Jones, Zachary Thomas, Doug Kramer, and Jatari Carter. Jones has been the starter at left tackle since his rookie season.
To the left, pitch left, blasting it out in front with Braxton Jones.
And while he demonstrates great athletic traits, he's been unable to handle bull rushes, and fans are wondering how much longer they will have to see Jones being pushed back into their quarterback. Thomas and Carter are no longer with the Bears, and Kramer is still on the roster, but has taken only 2 snaps in his career. Riley Reif was signed in the summer of that year and played several games. He's currently a free agent. Fast forward to Poles' second offseason. In free agency, he signed Nate Davis, who has inarguably been ineffective at right guard. It was even more concerning that the signing pushed Tevin Jenkins out of right guard, a position he was beginning to play at a high level. Since Jenkins moved to left guard, he has not been the same player.
The Chicago Bears select Darnell Wright, offensive tackle.
In the draft, Poles made his biggest acquisition for the offensive line, Darnell Wright. As a rookie, Wright showed some promise, but was inconsistent. That inconsistency is still evident after 3 games this season. The remaining 9 picks of the draft went to other positions. Potential linemen Poles could have invested in were center John Michael Schmitz, guard Osiris Torrance. Both were selected before Zach Pickens, and while neither of them played well in their rookie seasons, there are signs that they will develop into good players. That brings us to this past offseason. The Bears invested free agency dollars on Coleman Shelton and Matt Pryor. Neither has distinguished himself through 3 games. Ryan Bates was acquired for a 5th-round pick. He's currently on injured reserve with shoulder and elbow injuries. One has to wonder if Tyler Biadasz would not have been a much better free agent investment than any of those 3. In the draft, I personally was very excited about the Rome Odunze selection. But there were 7 offensive linemen selected after Rome in round 1, and only time will tell if the Bears should have invested in one of these players. Good offensive lines are not created overnight, but it doesn't have to take years either. For people who point to the Lions' offensive line, arguably the best in the NFL, and say it took them years to build, there's no doubting that. But look at the Kansas City Chiefs' offensive line, considered a top 5 line. Every player on the Chiefs' offensive line was acquired in 2021 or later. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, but Bears general manager Ryan Poles is paid to have foresight. We'll see how long it takes for him to build an offensive line that can protect Caleb Williams and open running lanes. For Buffone 55, I'm Aldo Gandia.
Wow.
Aldo opened up some wounds, man, because I've been dying to bring that draft up. I'm sorry, John. I mean to jump all over you. I'm just fired up right now because I have a couple more names. So obviously Cam Jurgens is a name he brought up. Abraham Lucas, the starting right tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, was drafted 1 pick right after Velus Jones' pick 73. You know, in the 4th round, I don't believe the Bears had a 4th-round pick, but in the 4th round, Spencer Buford, the guard from UTSA, went to the 49ers. He runs the same scheme. The 49ers, Mike Shannon, the same type of scheme, athletic offensive lineman. He would have been a hell of an addition here as well. So, this is why, and I've been hard on Poles, but, I've come around to him in terms of, because he's made some nice, movements, especially on the defensive side. I've always praised the Montez Sweat trade. I've praised the Darrell Taylor trade, the Andrew Billings trade. Signing's been terrific. So he's done good things on that defensive side, but the Jaquan Brisker pick to me was always a head scratcher, and he still is a guy that still takes bad angles to his run fits from that secondary. He's still a guy that has had more dropped interceptions than he actually has interceptions for his career. So that could have been a pick, could have been a Cam Jurgens, could have been an offensive lineman. I understand he goes by his board, and that's where you kind of to take a step back. Say, all right, if that's the highest rated player on his board, you got to see. You're an offensive lineman, Ryan Poles. That was my first thing, was when they hired this guy, he was going to fix the offensive line first and foremost. And the fact that it's been 3 years and he hasn't done it really bothers me. Sorry.
No,
really
hey, when it comes to drafts, I'm going to defer to you, Danny. So well done. I think it was someone in our chat. I think it might have been Zach who said this sounds like an episode of Forensic Files, which it really does, like digging deep into the investigation of what's going on there. But, I mean, great job by Aldo Gandia, by the way. Just the best in the business of putting these videos together. Basically, he's turning them around quicker than they turn around episodes of South Park. He's putting these together in like a day, and so, which is incredible. So hats off to him. And just,
he knew that was going to start again. My mortar run. Aldo knew how to push my buttons.
Absolutely, and it's just you relive some of that, and you're like, oh, geez. Alyssa, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was uglier than I remember. Just kind of like looking back at, first off, what the offensive line was when he inherited it. But like Danny, when they hired Poles, I was like, okay, former offensive lineman. He got up there during his press conference and talked about the importance of building an offensive line. And it felt like this is going to be the beginning of the offense finally getting to where it needed to go, because it starts in the trenches. And unfortunately, he just hasn't gotten it done. And some of those, like I've had this conversation with my dad a lot, and he would always say, Poles has shopped the bargain bin with these offensive linemen instead of maybe taking all that money and using it to get a really good one. And there was some free agents even in this last free agent class where it just feels like offensive line hasn't been the priority. And it should be the starting point, especially now we're on our second. Brian Poles is on his second quarterback. I know he didn't draft Justin Fields, but he inherited him and he came in and he was hoping to build around him and to really help him take the next step. That didn't happen. The offensive line back then was even an issue. And now with Caleb Williams, and we're 3 games in and we're worried he's not going to make it to week 7 or past week 7 because of this offensive line, which feels somehow worse than it was even last year with Justin Fields, with these supposed upgrades at different positions. And that should have been the most important thing. We know the Bears have been a defensive franchise, right? And it's really nice to see things clicking for the defense, but it's also like, when is it the offense's turn? When are we going to finally start seeing him making moves to help better the offense at an important position like the offensive line, where he sat up there and he said that's what he was going to do. And we just really haven't seen it at this point.
I've had it. I have had it.
I felt that way watching that video. I'm like, I can't wait till the video finishes so I can talk about this, because that's been bothering me for so long. It's especially with, okay, fine, Justin Fields, they threw him out to the Wolves. That wasn't their quarterback. This was part of their plan to, I don't know if this is exactly part of the plan. I don't know if they knew they were going to get the number 1 overall pick, but they were going to go ahead and eventually bring in their quarterback, right? Whether it's the first overall pick or whatever. You got your quarterback. That would be my initial thought would be, all right, first and foremost, you got to protect him. You got to give him a chance back there, and set up an offensive line that's going to be able to go on. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, other than Darnell Wright, who was a first round pick, and Karan Amadaji, who's a rookie, who's a 3rd round pick this last draft. They haven't really invested a day 1 or day 2 pick in these offensive linemen. Coleman Shelton is undrafted free agent, who was a street free agent cut from the Rams. Obviously, Ryan Bates, I know he's injured, but he's a journeyman offensive lineman that they gave up a 5th round pick for, that was going to get cut by Buffalo. He's out. And Nate Davis has been a bust as a free agent signing. Braxton Jones, God bless his heart. 5th round pick is played probably higher than what a lot of teams or personnel thought he was going to do. But he's up and down, and he's the guy that's always had one good game and then a bad game after that. So it's just the center of that offensive line is so important right now, and the fact that they're getting blown up, the fact that we have a video where all 4 offensive linemen are sitting on their ass at the goal line, it's an embarrassment. And I just didn't expect that from a former offensive lineman who I figured was going to come in day 1 is going to fix this offensive line first and foremost.
In year 3.
Yeah, and Alyssa, you made a good point about the bargain bin stuff, and I think I talked about this a couple of years ago when they brought in all of those second tier, third tier wide receivers on 1-year deals and hoping that somebody would shine through on that year. It's the analogy I made back then, and it's the analogy I'll make now. It's like, would you rather buy 10 $1 scratch offs or one $10 scratch off? Because the payoff on the $10 one could be really, really high, but you got 10 shots at these $1 ones, and there might be something good in there, but most likely there's not. So it's kind of like, where are you going to allocate that? Do you want to take the big swing on something, or you just want to throw a bunch of little ones out there and hopefully you hit a home run on something? So that's kind of what we're seeing with the offensive line when it comes to free agency, at least.
And I do believe this offseason that'll be a priority for them, but I don't want it to be at the cost of getting Caleb either hurt or having him rush his mechanics and get into bad habits, because now he's constantly looking to see who's coming after him to hit him, knock him out or all that stuff. So, I think I've seen some bad habits here at Caleb, rushing his throws, not setting his feet, trying to get the ball out real quick because he doesn't want to get hit. And I just hope that they don't do to him what was done to Justin early on in his career.
Yeah, that was the big concern there. And speaking of the offensive line, so guys, Tom Papalardo posted this question on Brad Biggs' timeline, and he also asked us for our take as well. Curious what you think of using all these offensive line suggestions, maybe after the Bears bye week, starting with Olin Krutz's idea of Tevin Jenkins at right guard, Greg Gabriel's idea of Karan Amagaji at left guard, and Tom Thayer's idea of Doug Kramer at center. So thoughts, Danny, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm up for anything. I'm up for any kind of change right now, because the status quo is not going to work anymore, right? I even threw out a couple weeks ago, maybe kicking Darnell right inside to right guard, where I think he has a chance to be an all-pro, and then kicking or starting Karan Amadaji at right tackle. But, if you want to keep Karmanaji there at left guard, kick Tevin Jenkins to right guard, that's fine with that. Put in Doug Kramer. He can't be any worse than Coleman Shelton right now. So, and if whatever you can do to solidify that offensive line and give Caleb a chance to get back there when he's throwing, and give you some semblance of a rushing attack here, hopefully your offensive coordinator can actually commit to the ground game. I think that's only going to help, get this offense, up and running, and more importantly, get Caleb's, progress or in his progression, on a steady, uphill tick there, and not, have him take all these, hits week in and week out.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Ryan Bates is eligible to return from IR after this week, so that he can also factor into different combinations as well. But John, what are your thoughts?
I was hoping Danny was going to say something different or something like more in the weeds, because I feel like I'm like, hell, what can it hurt to try it? Like, whatever. It's like, can you make it worse? I don't know. Like, so maybe you just keep, moving the Rubik's Cube around until something clicks. But for me, it doesn't really. It's worth a try. And as we're getting some more comments in the chat room here, so I want to go to the question that's actually for Danny from Bear Truth 9. It says, Danny, how would you fix the line in the offseason, possible free agent names, draft prospects? I mean, do you attack it in free agency, or do you go for the homegrown route, or maybe it's a mixture of both?
Well, I mean, personally, I would love to get it done in the draft, but obviously you only have a certain number of picks. You're going to have a bunch of needs in the offseason. I don't know what the free agent list looks like right now, and obviously that could change with franchise tags and all that stuff. So, that we can attack that, later on in the season. But, the draft, that's all I've been looking at. I'm looking at tackles, looking at guards, I'm looking at centers. You got to, for me, with Caleb, he's a tad over 6'1", so he's not one of those bigger, stronger quarterbacks. So for me, it's the interior of the offensive line that's going to be more important, more so than the tackles. I think, if you keep Braxton Jones on left tackle and Darnell Wright at right tackle, I think you can get with those two guys at tackle. But the inside's got to be formidable. You got to be able to solidify the inside, so that inside pressure, he's not straight into his face, and he has the ability to step up in the pocket. And that's something we've seen with Caleb, right? We've seen in the build when he feels the outside pressure, he's got good pocket presence. He's got good, ability to kind of see and feel that pressure come from behind him. He can climb that ladder, move up in the pocket, buy some time. That's why that inside that offense, the two guards in the center, it doesn't look like Tevin Jenkins is a long-term solution there. Unfortunately, I know we all like Tevin and some of his, the way he plays and some, the mentality and the toughness he brings, but unfortunately, he's been just as bad as some of the other guys inside. So, solidifying the center and the two guards in front of Caleb is going to be key for me. And even if you keep the tackles the way they are right now, but just get that center solidified right there. So that gives Caleb an opportunity to step up in the pocket and be able to, get the ball downfield and be confident and not be looking over his shoulder or be running for his life as soon as the ball reaches to him.
And we got another question about the offensive line. I'm going to start with Alyssa, but I want both of your opinions on this. It goes from Boss Players. What are the odds that we see Amagaji before week 6? Keeping in mind that I believe the Bears bye week is 7. So is week 7. So any chance that we would see him before the bye week, Alyssa, or at least what are your thoughts on having him in there before the bye week?
I mean, what would it hurt at this point? I mean, how much longer will Caleb Williams survive behind this current offensive line? Like we talked about in the last topic, I'm up for anything as well. Let's try different combinations, like whatever needs to happen. If we need to kick someone inside, I mean, I feel like we will see him sooner, Amagaji sooner rather than later at this point, because you need to find, like Matt Eberflus was talking about, like wanting to get consistency along the offensive line. And I think at this point, we can see that that's going to require something new, a different combination, moving some positions around to get that. Because, like we said, Caleb's not going to last behind this current offensive line. Something needs to happen. I think perhaps, like, what could it hurt putting Amagaji in there and seeing what he can do? What could it hurt putting Doug Kramer in there and seeing what he can do? Can't be much worse than what they're getting right now.
Danny, what are your thoughts on having him in there before the bye week?
Yeah, I would love to see him in there, but my only question or concern is how healthy is he, right? He's coming off that quad injury from last season. I know they talked about he's kind of repping up now. He's actually practicing on a more consistent basis. So, how healthy is he? Is he 100%? Is he 90%? Is he 92%? That's my only concern. But yeah, I mean, the suggestion we had earlier, kicking him into left guard and putting Tevin Jenkins right guard. Let's do it. Let's try it. It can't get worse, right? So that's the only thing is, like, you got to do something, at least to let the guys on the team know there's accountability. If you play like crap, and if you don't perform, you're gonna get your ass on the bench. And trudge the same offensive line week in and week out. That's getting your quarterback killed. That's showing no progress in terms of getting better. You can't keep doing it. And whether it's after the bye week or maybe before the bye week, as long as the kid is healthy, kick him in at left guard if you want. Let's go and put Kramer at center, and then let's move Tevin over to right guard and let's see what happens there. Because, like I said, and I think we all agree, it can't get any worse.
Yeah, and that was a big thing for me, making sure he's healthy before you put him out there. There's no need to rush a rookie in there if he's still banged up or not 100%. But if he is 100% and he's in game shape and he's been practicing, I don't see anything wrong with at least getting them some play, even if it's not a starter, but you're working him in to see how he does. I'm okay with that. So let's move on from the offensive line, because now it's time to play the game that's sweeping Bears Nation, or at least, Buffone 55. Buy, sell, or...
This is moronic.
Oh, we got that timing down now. I spoke about my feelings about Matt Eberflus earlier. On yesterday's Gabriel Talks Football, Greg, the former director of scouting for the Bears, was asked about the future of the team's head coach and whether his job is in danger. Greg answered no and added...
Guess what? He ain't getting fired after the season either, because that's the absolute worst thing you can do to that quarterback.
Now, Greg believes that the development plan Ryan Poles has in place for Caleb is to give him stability with the coaching staff around him, particularly the head coach. If this is indeed the plan, I'm going to start with you, Alyssa. Do you buy, sell, or think? Oh, we almost had it.
This is moronic.
Nailing it, and we dropped the ball in the fourth quarter. Do you believe that that's a necessary ingredient in developing Caleb Williams?
No, I'm selling this. I mean, you look at the importance of coaching around the NFL, and we've seen it through these first 3 weeks of the season, where you have teams like the Packers and the Vikings and the Steelers who are operating efficiently without a star quarterback. But those quarterbacks have been solid because they have a good game plan and they have a good coaching staff around them. And you look again at last night's game where the Commanders put Jaden Daniels in a position to thrive with Cliff Kingsbury. And by contrast, you have Shane Waldron putting a rookie quarterback in his third game in a position where he's throwing the ball 50 times. And then you have Matt Eberflus publicly coming out and saying that he doesn't want Caleb Williams to take risks throwing the ball down the field. And I get it. That's what a defensive-minded head coach is going to say, because you want to protect the football, but that's not going to help Caleb out in the long run. And it's something that we also saw the Bears do with Justin Fields in year 2 when Eberflus took over along with Luke Getsy. So, I mean, I know, and we talked about this a lot, and this is our biggest concern coming into this season. We're sick of repeating this gruesome cycle where you draft a quarterback and then you fire a coach and then you have that young quarterback where you learn a new offense and have a new head coach. But at the same time, what has Matt Eberflus done to prove that he's capable of hiring the right people who can develop Caleb Williams? I mean, Luke Getsy, you have Shane Waldron now. Eberflus's specialty is the defense, which, get it, has always been a staple of this franchise. But when does the quarterback become the top priority here? I mean, we've yet to see that in this current regime as it relates to coaching. So that's something I want to see change down the line here. If this continues and Caleb Williams struggles as a result, that's our biggest fear at this point. I'm not sold on sticking with Matt Eberflus, that is the consistency that Caleb Williams needs. I think the consistency that he needs is a good coaching staff around him that is going to put him in a position to succeed, not get him killed.
Danny, buy, sell, or moronic?
No, I agree with Greg in terms of stability. You want that for your young quarterback. And that's one of the reasons Alyssa touched on it. I wanted a whole new head coaching staff. You're going to get rid of the offensive staff, might as well bring in a whole new coaching staff. But that's neither here nor there. In terms of, stability is the best thing for the quarterback. But if your head coach continues to put the team in a bad situation in terms of game management, making idiotic, timeouts and idiotic challenges, and the team stumbles and gets to, say, 7 wins and misses the playoffs, I don't see how you can bring him back. Now, and Shane Waldron has a big say in this as well. Now, if he can right the ship and you see the progression on the offense and you see Caleb and the offense kind of taking off, we assume the defense is going to continue to get better or stay consistent throughout the whole season. Then I can see them kind of saying, all right, we got the offense going. We got 7-8 wins and we see a positive upswing here. One more year of Eberflus kind of bringing the whole gang back together again would work. But if this offense continued to play the way they are right now in terms of, Caleb getting hit, no running attack, inconsistent play calling, and some really weird decision making by the head coach and Matt Eberflus, and you miss the playoffs, I just don't see how you can bring him back, even though bringing him back and keeping continuity will be best for the quarterback overall.
Yeah, so I'm buying this, but I'm keeping the receipt very handy because I could return it at any point. Because I think that, yes, I think stability is very important for a young quarterback. We saw how it happened with Alex Smith, and he didn't really find his way until we got with Harbaugh with stability, and then Andy Reid with stability. But those are 2 very good head coaches, by the way, 2 very good offensive-minded head coaches. And so I think that, just because something is stable doesn't mean it's the right choice. Just because it's there and it's always been there does not mean it's necessarily the right thing to do. And so I think having the right coach with the quarterback is just as important, if not more, because we saw, Kevin O'Connell do wonders with Josh Dobbs last year. And look what he's doing with Sam Darnold this year. Look what Shane Steichen did with Gardner Minshew last year. We see Kevin Stefanski riding Joe Flacco into the playoffs. So it makes a difference of who that head coach is and what he can do with that quarterback. And Matt Eberflus is never going to be, developing Caleb Williams. He's the defensive guy. But at some point, like, being stable doesn't mean, okay, we can consistently get 6 to 8 wins. That's not the stability I want. And it's also like, well, the quarterback, he might develop, he might not. We're going through this cycle again. And that's why, Danny, I agree that if you're going to bring a whole new quarterback in, maybe you bring a whole new staff in, because you don't want to do that whole thing that we saw with Matt Nagy and Justin Fields, or John Fox with Mitch Trubisky. So it's for me, I really want it to work because I do want that stability. But if it doesn't, you don't throw good money at bad money. You don't be like doubling down where it's just like, well, he's been here a few years. Let's keep it going. We got to keep it going. I don't think you have to do that. And so I think that I'd rather be like, say, hey, you know what? Let's cut our losses and make sure we get it right this time. Not to say that the Bears will, but just say that, you know what? Make the right decision.
It's so much easier if you have a young quarterback and you team them up with a offensive minded head coach and a name. And I'm going to throw up. I think Johnny might have said this name earlier, but Kevin O'Connell. Look what he's done with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was a bust in New York. Sam Darnold was an afterthought, and now Sam Darnold is one of the more higher efficient rating quarterbacks in in the NFL, and he was coming in battling for that job. Right? He's on a 1-year deal, so coaching matters, right? So if you're going to get Caleb, you're going to line him up with a young offensive-minded head coach, and then it's easier, in my opinion, to bring in an offensive-minded head coach who will then go and get himself a defensive coordinator who will then run the defense, than it is to go and get a defensive-minded head coach who's got to go find the offensive coordinator that he wants. Well, then eventually, if he's any good, the offensive coordinator, he's going to leave to get a head coaching job, and now you're starting all over again. That's why this is the path I would have gone. If you're going to go and do it and draft Caleb, bring in a young offensive coordinator or offensive mind coach to work with him, and then they could go get their defensive coordinator. So, even if say they get a Ben Johnson from Detroit, if they fire Eberflus, he could keep, the current Bears defensive coordinator, have him run the defense because you have everything in place in terms of that side of the football, and you're not going to skip a beat. Bring in a guy that's going to fix the offense in Caleb, and he's going to, assuming he wants that 4-3, defensive scheme, all that stuff. So, I'm just saying, like, that's the point where once you have your head coach and your quarterback in line, in tune, it's easier to build the defense, in my opinion, from outside coordinators or bringing other guys in, as opposed to going and getting the offensive guy. If you're a defensive minded head coach, getting the offensive coordinator to stick with your quarterback.
And I want to make sure that, we are talking about, replacing a head coach in week 4. So, we're talking about the hypotheticals at the end of the season, because it's Bears fans.
We're always talking about the offseason.
That's what we do. That's what we do. We talk about it, whatever, because we assume the worst is going to happen. So when that happens, what's the contingency plan? Why should we be programmed any different? Why shouldn't we feel that way? There's mountains of evidence to show that we should feel that way. So I know that it's a little early to be talking about that, but it's just something that comes up on Bears shows across the nation, really.
And what makes it hard is he's a really good defensive minded head coach.
Sure.
He's a good guy. He's a good person. But some of these mistakes in year 3 just can't happen, right? Just the game management. Like this week, he's going up against Sean McVay. There's no way he's going to outwit Sean McVay and out-scheme Sean McVay in this game. You always feel like you're at a disadvantage in your head coach when you're going up against another head coach that's established and that's been in the league for a couple of years,
or just any head coach at this point.
Well, as Bears fans, do you ever really feel? Now, I'm not trying to be too hyperbolic, but like going into most games against good teams, do you ever feel like that the Bears have a coaching advantage? Now, obviously there's going to be a few maybe that are like first-year head coaches or whatever, but do you really feel that the Bears ever have the advantage in coaching? Have you ever felt that way?
No.
The only time I felt that way was when Lovie Smith was here. In terms of he had a defensive minded head coach who knew how to run his defense, who knew how to stop the opponent in terms of the offense. The unfortunate part for Lovie as well was hiring the right offensive coordinator and getting the right people on offense to be able to kind of complement his defense.
Yep. Well, let's try to move past this before we talk about the Rams, because the Bears do have a game this week. Before we talk about the Rams, we do have to get some positivity going on here. Let's talk about that defense, because the defense is playing well. Yes, they did allow 21 points, but there is some good news here, right, Danny?
Oh yeah, in terms of the defense, obviously, the 3 sacks, they got 3 sacks. The two turnovers that they got, the Colts got down in that within the goal line, and Anthony Richardson threw an easy lollipop interception that Trent Edmonds might never have an easier one in his career. But them getting the ball back for the Bears, putting the offense in an advantageous spot to go ahead and put points on the board was what you want to see, right? And the pressure wasn't there consistently, but when they did bring pressure, I like some of the design blitzes they brought. We talked about getting into Anthony Richardson's face up the middle. I think saw some linebacker blitzes there from Edwards. We saw Jack Sanborn become a more of a vocal player on defense as well. So I like the interchanging of the young players. So I think the arrow's still pointing up for defense. Darrell Taylor went down early on that special teams play. I was worried that he was going to be out, but he came back. Luckily, he looks like he's healthy. But a more consistent pass rush obviously is what you want. Andrew Billings, I've been mentioning 2 weeks now. He's been playing out of his mind in terms of a guy be able to affect the run game as well as get after the quarterback as well. So Gervon Dexter, he's growing up before our eyes, guys. He's maturing right before our eyes. 2 weeks, 2 sacks. He's a guy that's going to become a problem for NFL offensive linemen and NFL offenses here in the future. So you like some of the young guys developing. Pickens obviously still hurt. We saw the Booker make a couple of tackles for loss there in the backfield as well. So we saw some of the young players continue to get better and get after the quarterback and make their presence known. So defensively, I still like what they're doing. They just ran out of gas at the end, man. I think Billings got injured, nicked up. A couple other players got nicked up. And then, obviously, those turnovers kind of put them in bad spots. And then the Colts were able to take advantage of those and score 14 points off those turnovers. But I think defensively, they kept them in the game, right? They kept them in the game. They gave them opportunities. It just offensively, we couldn't cash in on those opportunities from the defense.
Yeah, Alyssa, I mean, the defense, we've talked about it before, it is keeping them in games, but eventually when you have those high collision positions on defense, guys are going to get banged up. And we saw this a couple of times in years past where the defense was keeping them in games, but then you lose a linebacker, you lose a cornerback, you lose a free safety, or you lose a lineman, and all of a sudden that defense that was your ultimate strong point is decimated by injury because they're on the field so much, and then you have a kind of average defense with all the subs in there, and then you have a below average offense, and all of a sudden you're a below average team. How do you feel about the defense so far, and how long can they keep this up?
Yeah, that's the question. How long can they keep this up? Because I think we can all agree the only reason that this team is not winless at this point is because of this defense, or the reason they didn't get blown out in week 2 is because of this defense and what they've been able to do. Listening to everything that Danny said, just the performance of individuals across the board, especially along the defensive line, which was, one of the biggest concerns heading into this season with Gervon Dexter. He's having a really good start to the season, and Andrew Billings. But like you said, John, at some point, and we saw that as it kind of looked like they were dropping like flies at one point. And I was like, we're getting nervous because we talked about this last week. That was the concern about how long can they last. And luckily, there were no significant injuries to any starters. There was one injury that I'm going to talk about when we kind of talk about injuries on both sides coming up here. But what they've been able to do, I think, is really impressive. I mean, like Danny said, I think they just ran out of gas at the end. I mean, they did give up 100 yards to over 100 yards to Jonathan Taylor. But again, they put this team in a position to win. And again, it's the offense. The offense needs to be able to score more than 16 points in this game, especially when you have 4th and 1 on your goal line. But obviously, we talked about that. But what they were able to do too to quarterback Anthony Richardson, they held him to a 39 passer rating. They had 2 takeaways there. They're still allowing 19 points per game. They're a top 10 defense in the league right now, and that's with being out on the field way too much. How long can they last? Man, I don't know, but the offense really needs to step up and sustain long drives to really give them a chance to last as long as possible.
Well, Alyssa, you brought up those injuries, so let's just look at that game against the Rams on Sunday. It's difficult to tell the permanent injury status of these guys or who's going to be in and out, but what are you hearing as far as both sides as injuries go?
Yeah, as you know, the first injury reports aren't going to come out until Wednesday afternoon, but kind of we can go off of last Sunday's game. So on Monday, Matt Eberflus said that the really only notable injury was to cornerback Terrell Smith, who suffered a hip injury against the Colts. So we'll find out more about his status coming up this week. And then also worth monitoring, obviously, is Keenan Allen, who missed his 2nd consecutive game with that heel injury. But Matt Eberflus said last week that Allen was close to returning. So we'll see if this is the week that he does, because it'd be really nice. The Bears offense, I think, is really missing him. And then as far as the Rams, they've been ravaged by injuries. But the good news is for them, there weren't any new injuries from Sunday's game to add to the list, but there are a lot of key players that they're going to be without, including star receivers Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They're down guard Jonah Jackson, safety John Johnson, guard Steve Avila, and tackle Joe Noteboom. So while Kupp managed to avoid IR, he's going to miss Sunday's game as he's dealing with that high ankle sprain. But I think the Bears are in a better position, definitely injury-wise, when you look at that laundry list of names on LA's.
For sure. And Danny, I guess we kind of know what the keys to victory are and based on what we've talked about, but if you had to summarize, what's it going to take to beat the Rams on Sunday?
Well, for me, again, it's maintaining the ball possession, establishing a running attack. I can 3 weeks now I've been just begging, get Caleb under center. We saw a little bit more of that in the second half. We saw a little bit more Rashawn Johnson, more downhill running, was a little bit more effective, obviously, than Swift is. So hopefully that's something that they can build on. Establish a run game, even if it's you're not popping 3, 4, 5 yards a run. You get that play action going. Allow Caleb to go ahead and make some plays. Behind that second level of that defense. And we saw that clip earlier where that throw to Rome Odunze. And speaking of Odunze, I want to see that connection continue to grow. And guys, it took 3 weeks for us to find Cole Kmet. And Cole Kmet came out and had a Cole Kmet type of game. And I want to see that continue. Him and I want Caleb to continue that rapport as well. So, DJ is going to be DJ Moore. And Keelan, who knows what we're going to get out of that guy. But, just continue to hopefully establish the running attack. Maintain position of the football. Get Caleb under center is what I want to see. the Rams, you touch on it, guys, they're coming in with a lot of injuries, but they went in and they beat the 49ers last week in a come from behind fashion. And we talked about Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, the head coach, the play caller, and the quarterback on the same page. And that's what you would want to see eventually here for Caleb, and then those guys, they go out with 4th and 5th round, free agent receivers, and they go out and pull a victory. So, if you're going to ever get the Rams at a time, this is where you want to, get them where no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua, missing key offensive linemen. Hopefully the Bears can, get pressure on Matthew Stafford. He's not a mobile quarterback, get up in his face and hopefully, get a couple sacks and get him in long, third or second and long, situations. And you can go out and just kind of pin your ears back and go after him. But it's going to be tough. And again, we're talking about the head coaches, right? It's Sean McVay versus Matt Eberflus. And there's hard for me to see where Matt Eberflus is going to out scheme Sean McVay. So, unfortunately, I think the Bears, can win this game. I just looking at that head coach and versus our head coach and what they're going to do in terms of offensively versus our defense. I just have a hard time seeing how the Bears are going to go and come out with a victory this week.
Well, then let's just get right into our predictions here, because I think the Bears might be favored because they're at home, like 1.5 or 2 points, depending on what book you're looking at. But Alyssa, do the Bears cover, which basically just means do they win, but or if they win by 1, depending on what you're getting the spread at. But what do you think their odds are to win this week?
Yeah, I don't have them covering right at this point. I mean, before last Sunday, I would have predicted that the Bears would win when you looked at the state of both teams at that point. But after the Bears failed to be what should still be a winless Colts team at this point, despite improvement from Caleb Williams, and then you look at what the Rams did against the 49ers at that big comeback win, I'm just having a hard time, justifying picking the Bears to beat them at this point. And again, the coaching disadvantage, like Danny has pointed out several times, going against Sean McVay, it just feels like he's going to find a way to pull it out. I feel like this is even with the injuries in, they're not going to have to go against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua along with some other key starters. But at the same point, I mean, I don't see a situation where Matt Eberflus is going to come out victorious. Against Sean McVay. So I'm going to take the Rams by a field goal. So I'm not picking the Bears to cover in this game. And I really hope that they change my mind, because it feels like every time I pick them to win, they're losing. So,
Danny, how do you feel?
Yeah, and then don't get me wrong, I think the Bears can beat the Rams. It's not like the Rams are a juggernaut coming in here, but I just don't see, unless I see changes both on the offensive play calling and some improvement there on the offensive line. It's hard for me to pick them to beat this team right now. So I got the Rams 20, the Bears 13.
So here's usually how it works for me. On Tuesday on this show, I'll be like, nah, it's not going to work. It's just they're going to end up losing this game. And then Thursday comes around, and then Friday and Saturday, and I start the gears keep going. I'm just like, you know what? There's a real route here. Oh, I turned delusional at the end of last week, where I'm just like, oh man, I think they're gonna be very successful against the Colts. They're gonna run the ball. Caleb's gonna have a great day. I think they could win by 10 points. That's how the delusional Bears fan works, where it's just like, nah, no way on Monday and Tuesday, and then by Friday and Saturday, oh yeah, we got a shot. And so right now, I think that they, I liked what the defense could potentially do against a decimated team like that. Although, we've seen some other guys, they still got, they got the young guy, Williamson, I think. They got Tutu Atwell.
Kyron Williams, the running back, yep.
Yeah, Kyron Williams, the running back. And so it's still Matthew Stafford throwing it back there now. He's if they can get after him, he's not going to be elusive. So I'm going to say, somehow, some way, the Bears end up winning this game 22-17, or actually no, 22-20, 23-20, a field goal. I'll say they're going to win by a field goal. I didn't even pick them to win this game at the beginning of the year. I had them losing this game at the beginning of the year, but I think without some of those playmakers, that might do it. Maybe I'm just talking myself into it. I keep gabbing as if I'm really trying to justify that pick to myself. So I'm just going to say that they end up winning this game. We'll go with 23-20. So
you are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Please act like one.
The sooner the better.
But yeah, preferably this week. That would be great. Let's go to one more chat question before we send it over to Danny for some of his spotlight stuff. It says, Danny, John, Alyssa, would you trade a third rounder for Hassan Reddick? And of course, you'd have to extend him. I'm saying no because they've spent enough money on the defense. They need to start reinvesting that into the offense. I know that they would like another pass rusher opposite of Montez Sweat, but you got some prospects on the other side that you're hoping that the young kid Austin, I can't remember his last name for God's sake.
Austin Booker.
Yeah, why did I say Hooper? Who's Austin Hooper? Is that a tight end? Yeah. Okay. So at any rate, I just think that while I think that he's a good player, he hasn't played yet this year, and you don't want to give up any more draft capital that you could potentially use on the offensive line. So I'm gonna say no. We no across the board on that one.
Yeah, no. If you're going to trade a third round pick, I'm trading it for interior offensive guard or offensive center, someone that's going to come in and impact my quarterback. Not like I said, we could. There's going to be guys in the draft. There's going to be guys in free agency you could probably go out and get. And I'm a big Austin Booker fan. I think he's only going to get better. Darryl Taylor, I've been, obviously after the first game, he's been kind of quiet, but I think he's still got potential to provide some pass rushing. Daniel Hardy is a guy that we've seen on special teams, but also he had a great, training camp, and we'll see if he gets some reps there as well. So, and guys, the development of Gervon Dexter is huge, right? So you want that 3 technique, you want that guy inside, and that's what Eberflus has been talking about all along, and him getting better. I mean, he's taken on blocks now. He's throwing guys throwing them out the club, and he's being effective on the run game and the pass rush. So I think the combination of him, Montez Sweat, and then whether it's Walker on the outside or Taylor or Booker, I think that's enough to get you. And obviously, those timely blitzes as well. I think that's enough to get enough pressure. I think if you're ever going to trade a draft capital, it's got to be for the offensive line.
All right. Well, go. I'm sorry. Let's go.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I'd love to see Hassan Reddick on this team, but I think, like we've been saying, we want more investment on the offensive line. So if I'm going out making a trade, if you're Brian Poles, it has to be for the offensive line.
Exactly. And so, Danny, every week we like to close the show by getting some of these mini scouting reports that you're posting on the Barroom's YouTube channel under the name Shimon Spotlight. You got a player for us this week?
Yeah, so lately, last couple of weeks I've been talking about offensive and defensive linemen, and obviously I think that's going to be the main focal point this offseason for the Bears, particularly the offensive line. But we're talking about running the ball. We're talking about establishing the run. Like, hey, let's talk about a running back. For college football fanatics, Ashton Jeanty from Boise State is a guy that's well known. But for the occasional college football connoisseur, you might not know this kid. But this is a guy, 5'8", 215 pounds, the running back from Boise State. He's a 2023 Mountain West Conference Offensive Player of the Year. Rushed for over 1,300 yards last year with 14 touchdowns. Currently, he's leading the conference with 9 touchdowns in just 3 games. A former 4-star prospect out of Texas. This kid is a dynamo in terms of an overall athlete. Torch number 7, Oregon, which we're seeing some of the clips here in week 2 of the season for 25 carries, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging 7.7 yards a carry. So a low center of gravity runner who displays instincts and vision when he runs. He sees that backside blocks and hits it with the hole quickly with authority. Quick feet, with swivel hips to be able to jump stop out of congested holes and bounce it to the outside, as you see right there in that highlight clip there. Contact, balance, and strength to be able to run through arm tackles, and the speed and burst to accelerate through the holes to get into that second and third levels of defense. Displays that home run hitting ability. Natural hands catcher, provides a pass catching option out of the backfield. This is a guy who's already got 62 receptions in his career at Boise State, only a junior. So this is a guy that he's not going to be a first round pick, but he's a guy. This is the third, fourth round, maybe even second round. We'll see how it goes, but he's a dynamo in terms of a guy that can come in and compete there in the backfield. And again, looking at the Bears scheme here in terms of guys that give you some of that home running ability, but also be able to bounce it to the outside with quick feet and elusiveness and vision, but also has no problems lowering his shoulder and going in between the tackles and getting some of those tough yards as well. So, he's not big enough to be a bell cow running back. So that's why I'm saying day 2, maybe day 3 kind of back. But he's a guy you bring in here, you put him in that backfield, whether it's Khalil Herbert, whether it's Rashawn Johnson, you mix him in there. I think this is a guy, and again, gives you pass catching option out of the backfield as well. I think this is a guy that is going to make some noise come next draft season. So Ashton Jeanty from Boise State is a running back to keep an eye on.
All right. It's always draft season, isn't that right, Danny? So
always.
always. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Buffone 55. An important programming note, Bare Their Souls is now on Wednesday nights. Mac and Reed is on Thursday nights, and the Willis Twins are on Friday. On Sunday morning, the Barfly Tailgate Show starts 3 hours before kickoff, and that's our Bears coverage for the rest of the week. Hey, Alyssa, tell us what you're working on over at the USA Today Wires.
Yeah, so over at Bears Wire specifically, we're going to be getting you ready for Sunday's game against the Rams. We have all the latest news, injury updates, analysis, game preview content leading up to kickoff on Sunday afternoon, and we'll have plenty of post-game coverage as well, so make sure to check us out.
Great stuff. And Danny, like we had said, always draft season. What game in college football are you most interested in scouting this week?
Well, the big game obviously is the big SEC matchup, number 2 Georgia versus number 4 Alabama, and then we've just talked about the type of NFL talent that's littered all over the football field in that game. But the sneaky game that I'm almost going to be looking forward to, guys, is more of a local game here, and that's number 19 undefeated Illinois at 4-0 versus number 9 Penn State at 3-0. And there are some players there on the offense and defense lines I'm keeping an eye on, right? Penn State, obviously, the headline grabber is Abdul Carter, the outside linebacker / defensive end, 6'3", 252. The next potential great pass rusher coming out of Penn State could be Abdul Carter. Zane Durant, number 28. He's a defensive lineman, 6'1", 280, 299, 288, 290. Could be a potential 3 technique. Gainey Dennis Sutton, number 33 for the Nittany Lions, 6'5", 266, is a base defensive end guy. Flipping it over to the Illini, left tackle J.C. Davis at 6'5", 320 pounds is a guy I'm keeping an eye on there as well. Melvin Priestley he's a right tackle, but I think he's more of a guard prospect at the next level, guy to keep an eye on. And on defensively for the Illini, Dennis Briggs Jr., 6'4", 275, another left defensive end prospect, and Seth Coleman, another outside linebacker defensive end kind of tweener, 6'5", 250. These are all guys potentially that the Bears could be looking at, especially on the offense and defensive line. So that Penn State-Illinois game is going to be a pretty good game as well.
Great stuff. A great slate of college football coming up this week. Well, like I said, that'll do it for this edition of Buffone 55. Thank you so much for anyone that tuned in, whether it's the live version, the podcast version, the audio version, or the video version. Whether it's your first time or your 55th time, we appreciate each and every one of you. Without y'all, we'd just stop doing this. We've been doing it for 8 years, but we're still doing it because people tend to, I guess, listen. So I guess that's a good sign. So we do appreciate that. Make sure you like and subscribe on all of the platforms, whether it's YouTube or Podbean or Apple Podcasts or whatever the hell you're listening on anything you want. If you listen to us on your toaster, make sure you subscribe. But anyway, that'll do it for this edition of Buffone 55. We'll see you next week. For Alyssa Barbieri and Danny Shimon, I'm John Buffone. And for Aldo Gandia, enjoy the game, everybody.